Hello, everybody, and welcome to our parenting event, Parenting with CP, which is titled From Expectations versus Reality. I am pleased to welcome three incredible speakers here among us who will later deliver their speech on the selected topic. And I'm also happy to welcome my co-moderator, Laura, my colleague from the CP ECHO board. And she and I will...
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, she and I will lead you through this event and also guide you and encourage you to ask some questions at the end. But first, let me also greet the leader of our Adults with CP group, Matthew Gentlein, and I asked Matthew to say a few words to welcome us and maybe give some introducing remarks. So, Matthew, the floor is yours.
Hi, Agnes. Hi, everyone. And thank you very much to Laura and you, as well as all the participants and panelists in today's meeting. Well, I think in this kind of troubled time, it's always necessary to remember and remind ourselves that we are all human beings, that we all share the same humanity, and that we are endowed with certain rights and possibilities just by virtue of... Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me since the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good.
It was on mute. So yeah, as I was saying, we are all endowed with certain rights, and I believe it's extremely important to remember that children are our future, and therefore, if we wish to have children, we should all be able to do so, and wherever we live and whoever we are. And that's why I think it's especially relevant that we start with this topic today concerning the adult group with CP, and I look forward to a fruitful debate.
Thank you, Matthew, for your kind words. And now I'm more than happy to cooperate with Laura on this and lead this event, because Laura and I have one thing in common, beside the fact that we are two young women with cerebral palsy. Laura is already a mother, and she will tell about her experience at the very end when we switch from expectations to reality. And myself, I also want to become a mother one day. This is something that has been planted in my heart from a very young age. But the problem that I face in everyday life is that people around me are still full of prejudices. And there is also a lack of information on the topic of pregnancy, gynecologist exam, and all the other things connected with parenting with cerebral palsy, also how to raise children when you yourself have certain limitations, where is all the help one can get, and so on. And this is why I'm also very happy to hear future speakers and their experiences, so that we can create better ground and foundation to start to develop a network, association, or anything like that in the future. Because I come from Slovenia, where there's hard to find any parent with cerebral palsy or any kind of disability, because Slovenian people simply do not talk about this. They think that disabled persons are asexual and they don't have any other needs than for food and basic safety. But I hope that in the future, this situation will improve so that my children also can grow up in a safe and inclusive environment. And that means that I am so happy to introduce you our first speaker, which is Dr. Sonali Shah. She is an associate professor in disability and life course research and works at the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences in Nottingham, if I'm not mistaken. And she leads the TIA project that is funded by the NIH Research for Patients Benefit Program. And the main purpose of this study is to improve understanding of the effects of aging on men and women with cerebral palsy, and also encouraging healthcare to be alert on their needs and to their requirements, and also to enable access to services across the life course. And these insights will hopefully help to help all health and rehabilitation professionals to identify and meet the needs of persons with cerebral palsy and also other groups with complex disabilities. So, Dr. Sonali, please, you're welcome to deliver your presentation.
Thank you very much, Agnes, for that introduction. So I'm going to deliver this presentation with my assistant, Jane Clements. Again. So I've been a researcher for 20 years now. Recently, my work is around challenging health inequalities for disabled people, particularly people with CP across the life course.
My passion is to lead research to help mobilise social justice and equality for disabled people across the life course and in different areas of social life, i.e. education, employment, family and healthcare.
So I use non-traditional research methods and impact tools, including theatre, film, animation, and internet methods, in order to
A, share the research results to various audiences beyond the academic gates in an accessible and interesting way, and B, to provide a platform for people with different and quite severe impairment effects to participate and have a voice in research about issues relating to their lives.
today I want to talk about the RICH project,
which is the rights and choices for women with cerebral palsy.
The RICH project is funded by a National Institute of Health Research. It's a 2-year project starting 2022 and ending this December. So this is a team of 4 academics. I lead it. We have a professor of midwifery and obstetrician and a medical sociologist. We also have an advisory group of people with CP who I'll talk about later.
It is a multi-method study. The aims are A, to understand the reproductive choices and experiences of care and support for women with cerebral palsy who have been pregnant within the past 5 years, and B, to find out what provisions are available in labour suites and maternity wards to support women with CP and other physical impairments.
So we want to collect this information in 3 ways.
1, to conduct a short survey of maternity and birthing units across the UK. 2, conduct 15 to 20 in-depth interviews with women with CP. And 3, have 5 focus group discussions with maternity healthcare professionals.
So today I'm going to just talk about the interviews. And I have to stress these are preliminary findings because I'm still doing the interviews. And my colleagues are leading the survey. Yeah.
The team are aiming to produce recommendations to inform the improvement of maternity service policy and provision for women with CP, and maybe also a teaching resource.
They're now focusing on the interviews. The purpose of the interviews is to
find out about the reproductive choices and experiences of women with cerebral palsy during considering pregnancy or motherhood, pregnancy, childbirth, postnatal care, early motherhood, and loss in pregnancy or childbirth. And 2, identify the good and poor practice in maternity care for women with CP during pregnancy, childbirth, and the postnatal period.
So just to be clear, considering pregnancy, as Agnes said, is people who are thinking about being mothers, but why, what, and the expectations they have or the barriers they face going forward. So women were invited to participate in my study if they met the following criteria.
They identified as a woman, identified as having CP, aged 18 years or over, live in the UK, have the capacity to consent and participate, and have experienced any pregnancy within the last 5 years, including pregnancy loss.
So far, I have conducted 10 interviews with quite a diversity of women with CP.
The sample age ranges from 27 to 43. Women have different types of CP and live in the West Midlands, the South of England, East Midlands, Scotland, Wales, and Yorkshire. All have had between 1 to 3 pregnancies.
Most were white, but I had one Polish lady, Irish lady, and Canadian lady. So, again, as I said, this call reports on preliminary analysis from the interviews. The purpose of the interviews was to find out
One, the choices and experiences for women with CP during the following 5 stages, considering motherhood, pregnancy, childbirth, postnatal period, early motherhood, and 2, the provisions available in labour and maternity wards to support women with CP.
So, when thinking about becoming a mother in the future, women I talk to are often afraid of potential difficulties around pregnancy and childbirth. Also, the whole issue about getting a partner and the whole perception of being considered asexual was a big barrier. And Bella will over. Oh my God, sorry.
Bella was untrusting of maternity services. She said, I never wanted to be a mum. I didn't trust that the services would be very good. Basically, I didn't trust that they'd have the support, or I thought I'd be judged because I thought I'd struggle more than I actually do.
And we also found that for some women, being pregnant actually exacerbated their CP effects.
So Bella experienced more pain, more fatigue, and more Braxton Hicks. Sally started wetting herself because her organs had shifted.
And Jenny had more balance problems than before. So we all know from research that when you're CP in adulthood causes increasing falling and balance problems. But when you're pregnant, it seems to get worse.
Jenny said, I was very worried about falling, and I did feel like I was very unsteady on my feet in later pregnancy. And I think I got more hip problems and things in the middle of my pregnancy. And towards the end, I was skewing left.
And Sally has some unforeseen effects.
She said, I was having really bad back pain. I was also having a lot of accidents, as in wetting myself. And that wasn't something that I ever did before. What they told me was it isn't always just having it vaginally. It's also the fact that when you're pregnant, your organs, like your bladder and everything, are moved and shifted and moved around. And that's what can cause you to have accidents when you cough.
The women also spoke about good practice and poor practice in pregnancy care. There again, going back to Bella, she tells positive stories about the environment and healthcare procedures. However, she did herself work in hospital and she knew a lot of the colleagues that helped her. So that might have had an effect. She said,
I had a connection with some of them, the midwives, through my job anyway. So they sort of like recognized me. It wasn't so much shock. And they were very much like, until you tell us that you actually need a bit more help, you just need to know that it's there. Just let us know you want it. So there'd be a lot more hands-on with sort of helping me get on and off examination tables and making sure that they left me. They were a bit more flexible with appointment times, and they'd move appointments for me if I couldn't get to the appointment.
unfortunately, Andrea didn't have such a positive experience.
When I did the pregnancy test and then I went to the GP, I was with him for like 8 years and he was a male. I remember I walked in and he did, another test. And his first word was, are you keeping this pregnancy? That was his first word. And I'm like, in my head at the time was like, why would I not keep it? Is it not safe? Does he know that it's not safe? I'm going to pass something on to that child, He knows something about it. So obviously, I wasn't expected for that kind of question.
The woman I interviewed unfortunately highlighted more negative and positive aspects of postnatal care. As Bella indicated, practitioners did not seem to know about the patient's impairments, effects, mobility, fatigue, etc.
Also, no rehabilitation is offered to women with CP after or during pregnancy. Sally says, I was also having a lot of accidents, as in wetting myself, and that wasn't something that I ever did before. And every time I spoke to the doctor, they said, that's normal. Eventually, after a year, they referred me to the physio. And the physio said, did nobody ever give you any postnatal exercises? And I said, no, nothing. And they said, oh, well, you should be doing them from the moment you had her. And I went, wow. I didn't know that. These exercises were very little and very slight movements. But the first time I did them, I was nearly sick because it was that sore. The more I did them, after a few weeks, the pain eased and then I was okay. So if they'd have told me that at the beginning, I wouldn't have gone through any of that.
I have to say, talking about perinatal care, my colleagues who are midwives, etc., just say in the UK, postnatal care in general is not great for any woman. Okay. So we know from other research and being with having CPS helps. Adults with CP need ongoing rehab to maintain strength, stamina, to reduce falls, etc. Again, like I said before, this is doubly important when women become pregnant and undergo childbirth.
Several of the participants had been having private physio anyway, so they continued with this. However, specialist rehabilitation advice and intervention is lacking and needs to be available to disabled women.
So I just highlighted the lack of rehab offered to pregnant women with CP. So here are actual first-hand experiences of the bodily effects of pregnancy and childbirth for Sally and Jenny.
Sally says, I feel like I flourished when I was pregnant, and I don't know whether that's because I was more relaxed, because I'd always wanted to be pregnant, and I was always really safe in what I did and how I'd move. But I do remember when I was about 29 weeks, I started getting the most horrendous girdle pain, hip pain. Many women get it so bad that they end up in a wheelchair. It's a common thing. The hormones that get released to your hips to expand to allow you to give birth, they cause a lot of pain while they're expanding. They kept saying, as soon as you give birth, it will go away. And I didn't believe them. But then as soon as I had her, literally the next day, it was gone.
But the women in the study did experience more fatigue than other women would. Again, they found maternity care very unhelpful in this respect. As Jenny said,
I have more hip problems. The main barrier I faced in the whole journey, if you include after the birth as well, would have been the physical exhaustion and the physical side of it. Lifting my baby and carrying her, pushing her in the pram. I do get a lot of support from my partner, but the feedback, I've got to be honest, from medical staff is, yeah, it's great that you've got family support, but there's not really additional support we can provide you with unless you really end up having problems in the future.
so it seems that going on to early motherhood and the support and advice and adaptations available seem from our study that the Parents for CP UK Facebook group was very, very useful for mums. So several of the women found gadgets on other groups.
Sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. The women always needed to find these adaptations out for themselves and never know what services available to provide support or equipment.
Next slide.
Yeah. So, just in conclusion, I asked all of the women I spoke to for some helpful tips for women with CP and for medical maternity care practitioners involved in their reproductive journey. This is what they said.
That knowledge of CP in the maternity healthcare sector is lacking, which leads to poor practice. Sally said, get your knowledge in check regards to cerebral palsy, because if you don't understand that, then you're not going to be able to fully support the individual. Work together, be aware of the patient, share information, leads to good practice. Bella, the midwives, the GP, the health visitor, obviously had all spoken to each other. They were all aware that there were additional elements in this household and they'd shared information. More time and support during postnatal period. Jenny, I think that I would have appreciated more time because of my condition and help assess my baby's needs and help with that going forwards. And accessible information. Julie says, everyone is overwhelmed when they're pregnant, so something easy to read would be helpful. Literature for people with cerebral palsy would be really helpful.
Just lastly, this is my pregnancy advisory group of 10 members with CP, including Richard Luke and someone from America. They have advised on the direction of the project and also help recruit participants to the study. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shah, for your work and for your very important presentation. And now I give the floor to Ayla Ekhoff, the chair of Cerebral Palsy Foundation from US. She has an economical and financing background, but now she will speak about her experience as a mother with CP. But I am sure that she is one of the best examples of the motto, our abilities are stronger than our disability. Ayla, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you guys for asking me to participate in this event today. It's very exciting for me to see events around adults with CP. It is something that the foundation is working with many of the folks on this call to sort of expand the knowledge around the globe. So the fact that this is an international forum, I think, is really important. By way of background, as the guys have suggested, I spent 40 years in finance at some of the biggest firms in the US. I retired last year and I took over as board chair for the Cerebral Palsy Foundation. I have spastic diplegia and walk with 2 canes. I have 2 kids, one from my husband's previous marriage and a daughter who's 27 that I gave birth to. To say that beating my husband, marrying him, and especially having my daughter is probably the biggest, best, and most important thing I've done in my life would be an understatement. And it's something that I knew that I wanted from the time that I was a child. I tell my daughter all the time that she's kind of my dream girl, right? I dreamed about her when I was a little kid, about having a little girl. And I couldn't be happier the way it's turned out. That said, obviously with CP, you have certain physical limitations, right? So there are things you need to plan for that are a little bit different. I was very fortunate in terms of working for firms that provided me with really terrific medical care in the US, but also that I had an OB/GYN that I spent time with and explained, what I wanted, and that initially my hope was to have a vaginal birth. But once my water broke and I spent 9 hours in labor and I was totally exhausted, that started at 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock the next morning. The OB's like, look, it's time for her to come out. You're exhausted and this isn't going to happen. So I ended up having a C-section, which one of the nice things about that, there's a joke in the US that when babies come through the birth canal, they sort of all look like this character that used to be on a sitcom TV. And when a child comes out from a C-section, they're all pink and perfect and fabulous. My biggest fear as a woman with CP is that my daughter would also have CP. So I probably asked my husband about 6 times when she came out, is she okay? At which point, all the tests were done. She's fine. My daughter is just a force to be reckoned with. But again, I was very fortunate to have really terrific care. That said, it's interesting that I moved from the suburbs on Long Island back to Manhattan when my husband passed away a little over a decade ago. And when I went, to get gynecological care in New York, in the city, the first time I found a gynecologist, she was refusing to give me a pap smear unless I could spread my legs wide enough to get into the stirrups, right? And, I refused to leave her office until she completed the exam. So the reason why I bring this up is because I think it's really mission critical, and this is for people with CP, without CP, or anything else, to really be their own self advocate, right? It's unfortunate that the medical profession in particular knows very little, in my opinion, except for doctors that are specializing in this area. There are very, very few that know anything about CP. 2 years ago, I broke a bone in my foot, actually 2 bones. And I went into the emergency room and saw an orthopedist at a big primary hospital in New York. And he had no idea what CP was, and suggested, after he wrapped my foot in an ace bandage and put a fabric boot on it, that he could just hand me a pair of crutches and I could swing out of there. I had walked in with one cane and ended up, going out in a combination of a wheelchair and a walker. So even in the best of circumstances, in an environment like New York in the United States, where medical care is pretty spectacular, and because I worked for the kind of firms that provided for really superior care, it still shocks me to this day that doctors don't get it, right? Now, I could be upset about that or be, angry about it or anything else. But I think what we really need is for people to really bring the positive side of disability to the forefront. I don't, different people use different language. I consider myself a person with a disability, right? It's one element of who I am. And in the last few years, I've probably embraced it as my superpower. So I don't look at my CP as a problem. I look at it as just one element that makes me who I am, right? And look, there are things that everybody's good at and not good at, right? Just because you can see mine doesn't make me different, right? It just means, and what my dream in life really through all of this is that everybody that I meet, regardless of how I walk into the room, would just assume that I'm competent until I demonstrate to them that I'm not, right? So that's why forums like this are so important, to have a dialogue, so that doctors who are uncomfortable, or if you're looking for a job and employers are uncomfortable, you know it some people get really angry that potentially they have to teach people about disability or teach people about their CP. I don't have a problem with any of that, right? I want to learn things every day that I'm not about things that I don't necessarily know a lot about or I'm not comfortable with. Why should I feel that I can't do the same for somebody else who's obviously uncomfortable when I walk into a room? I can see it. I can read it on people's faces. So be observant and take the opportunity to change people's minds and perspective. That's the only way we're going to be successful. Not only do we want good medical care in being parents, doctors who actually respect the fact that, yes, we are sexual beings. We are going to grow up. We are going to date. We are going to get married. We are going to have kids. Right. And it's a fantastic experience, and you'll have to make certain adjustments. So for example, I lived on a house in Long Island, and it was a 2-story house. My husband knew he was never allowed to leave the house with the baby on the 2nd floor because I couldn't carry the baby down the stairs. So every morning when he got up to go to work right after I gave birth and I was home with her, right, his job was to bring the baby downstairs. And I had a bassinet on wheels because I couldn't carry her, but I could roll her from one room to another, right? We built a deck with a ramp out the back door so that I could put the baby in the stroller, and God forbid the house caught on fire or something else terrible happened, I could roll her out the back door. I had lots of tools and things on wheels that were very stationary, like swings or other things that I could put her in so I could take a shower, right? I needed to put her in something where she could be safe for 10 minutes so I could take a shower, right? So you find tools and you learn to adapt. Right. So I have a lot of equipment. Look, I have equipment behind me that you can see, pulleys and things that I do for exercising, and a piece of equipment to the right behind me. Right. So I recognize that because of my CP, I need to ensure that I stay fit, ensure that I stay healthy, ensure that I exercise. I did those same things when I decided to get pregnant, because I knew dealing with a baby was going to put, more of a strain on my body. So I did more exercises. I did more workouts. I wish I still drank as much water as I did when I was pregnant, because that would probably help me a lot too, but I'm not really good about that. Right. So I think everybody has to make their own choices. But the biggest thing you can do for your own benefit and for the benefit of everybody with a disability, not just those with CP, is to be an advocate and focus on the things you can do, right? Every day when I wake up, I think about the stuff that I'm good at and the stuff that I'm not good at. I try to focus and make the things that I'm good at better, and make the things that I'm not so good at, less important. And gadgets and adaptations and friends and whoever to make it better. And doctors in particular, it's unbelievable to me how little they know about CP or understand. So take the opportunity every time you're with them to educate them, because it will not only be better for you, but better for every patient they come in contact with, right? So I use my experience, my career and everything else I've done. I was a senior executive of one of the biggest asset managers in the world, right? So if I could do it, so can everybody else. But that means that when you go into a job interview, you have to have the right mindset. When you're looking for employment, you have to focus on the things you're good at, right? And demonstrate and talk about the things that you can do, the things you can bring to a company, the things that you can bring to a situation, the benefits that having you in the room create for everybody around you. That's the message I'm trying to deliver, right? That's the person I want to be, not only now and throughout my career, but what I'm trying to do going forward. Right. So I'm very focused on changing perspective, because I think it's important. We're all human. I mean, to the point of, I love all the research that's being done now for adults, because there was nothing when I was growing up. I didn't even know that I had spastic diplegia until Rachel Byrne from the Cerebral Palsy Foundation told me about Lily Collison's book. And that's when I learned for the first time what I had. I'd been looking for that book since I was a teenager. So there's a tremendous lack of information and understanding out there, which is why I'm so excited about Dr. Shaw's research and the things that are being done, because the more we can disseminate that information, the better off we're all going to be. And I'll stop there, because I really want this dialogue to be a dialogue and to have it be interactive. Does anybody have a question or anything they want to ask or what have you?
questions will be posed at the end. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you very much for these inspiring words. I'm sure we can find a lot of encouragement there. And now, let me give the floor to our final speaker. That is Miss Nyegan Tai Chi, who is an adult living with CP and a current member of the executive committee of the CP Families Association of Vietnam. And she also leads the club of adults living with CP. And such club is one of the few examples we are familiar with, which is the clubs of adults with CP, and is actually responsible for organizing to advocate their own rights and needs. So I give the floor to Ms. Chai.
Hello, hello. Phúc có đấy không ạ?
Em có, em có.
Có phải là mình vừa mới nói không?
Đúng rồi ạ. Vâng.
Dịch dụ thẳng nhé.
Dạ vâng.
Mình là Nguyễn Thị Chi, đến từ Hội gia đình trẻ bại não Việt Nam và đồng thời là chủ nhiệm câu lạc bộ người trưởng thành sống với chứng bại não tại Việt Nam.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nguyen Thuy Chi, and I'm from Vietnam. I'm one of the members of CPFAV in Vietnam, and I'm also the chief of the club supporting the cerebral palsy children in Vietnam too.
Và vừa nghe mọi người chia sẻ thì mình cảm thấy rất là thú vị, bởi vì đây là một cái chủ đề mà cũng rất là nhiều bạn CP trưởng thành quan tâm.
So I have heard a lot of your sharings, and I also do sympathize with all of your story with your CP problems.
Ở Việt Nam thì cái tỷ lệ mà người CP sinh con chưa nhiều.
So in Vietnam, the CP children rate is not really high because people always face with the moral considerations.
Vì lý do mà ngay cả cái việc mà các bạn ấy tự tin để đến với tình yêu cũng đã là một cái rào cản, cũng còn là một cái vấn đề khá là khó khăn tại Việt Nam.
So this is mostly due to the lack of confidence. Therefore, they didn't want to find a true love so that they will have a child.
Nên là khi được nghe mọi người chia sẻ thì Chi cũng cảm thấy đây là một cái chủ đề mà khá là nên được quan tâm nhiều hơn.
So when I heard all of your sharings, and I do believe that these problems should be discussed and also be figured out for children.
Bởi vì trước hết thì đây cũng là một cái nhu cầu và quyền con người cơ bản của mỗi con người khi được sinh ra.
Because this is mostly due to the human rights of every children that CB deserve to have.
Vì vậy mà cái việc mà để mà thực hiện được cái điều này thì bản thân chính những người CP như chúng tôi cũng cần được trang bị thêm những cái kiến thức để mà hiểu rõ hơn về chính cơ thể mình và để thực hiện cái nhu cầu và mong muốn của mình.
So to achieve this achievement, we need to figure out who we are, who is CP, so that we can deal with our problems.
Trước tiên thì đối với Việt Nam thì cái việc đầu tiên mà thì Chi và cũng như câu lạc bộ CP trưởng thành hướng tới thì đó là cái việc mà nâng cao cái năng lực cho các bạn CP trưởng thành.
So first of all, things which you want to share is, as the chief club assistant of adult CP children in Vietnam, is to increase and also to help people to conceive of their ability and also the professional skill to help children to rehabilitate.
Chúng tôi đến cái việc đầu tiên là các bạn nhận thức được chính bản thân mình và những cái nhu cầu và cái cách thức để mà làm chủ cái đời sống của mình trước tiên.
So the things that we want to let them know first is to aware of themselves, to manage, to find a means of living so that they can be meet the end means for themselves.
Bởi vì theo như tình hình chung thì các bạn CP tại Việt Nam vẫn còn sống phải phụ thuộc vào gia đình rất là nhiều.
This is mostly due to the CP children, mostly in Vietnam, depends on their parents a lot.
Chính vì vậy mà cái việc mà chúng tôi đi từ cái hướng là đào tạo về cái nâng cao về cái kỹ năng và cũng như là cái việc mà để các bạn hiểu rõ về bản thân mình hơn.
Therefore, we want to evaluate the professional skill, and also we want them to more aware of themselves.
Tiếp đó là về cái vấn đề về nhu cầu, về tình cảm, về tâm sinh lý, cũng như là những cái nhu cầu và mong muốn khát khao xây dựng gia đình.
Next is about emotional demands to build or settle down a relationship.
Vì vậy mà chúng tôi cũng rất là mong muốn được học hỏi và cũng như lắng nghe ý kiến từ bạn bè quốc tế để chúng tôi lấy được chúng tôi học hỏi được những cái kinh nghiệm đó để về hỗ trợ cho cộng đồng của mình.
Therefore, we really want to hear some advice and shares of international families to help us to figure out more about the problems of parenting of the CP children.
Cảm ơn mọi người đã lắng nghe và rất mong là nhận được thêm những cái câu hỏi và cũng như là cái ý kiến từ mọi người dành cho cộng đồng CP Việt Nam.
Thank you for listening, and I hope that if you have any advice, just tell us, and we will be conscious about it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shi, for your inspiring speech. And now I give the floor to anyone who wants to ask any question. So you could raise the hand up or write in the chat box, as you prefer. But let me not to ask the first question to Ayla, because I'm very, very interested in breastfeeding, because for me, one of the most difficult aspect of the motherhood was the breastfeeding. And after I will speak about my experience, but first of all, I would like to ask something from her experience.
Sure. You know, it's interesting. I was possessed, probably crazed about wanting to breastfeed my daughter because my son, who I inherited when I married my husband, he had a lot of ear infections and was constantly sick. And he was bottle fed. And from everything I had read while I was pregnant, if you breastfeed your kids, they're just going to be a lot healthier, you know, long term, etc. The first couple of weeks were terrible. I took a breastfeeding class, and it was absolutely painful, certainly for the first couple of days. But I didn't give up. For the soreness, the crazy thing, what really works best, minus all these creams and all these things that everybody tries to sell you and tell you to use, breast milk heals just about everything. You can put it on any cut or a scrape or anything anywhere on your body, and within a couple of hours it'll heal. It's the most miraculous stuff on the face of the earth. And I just used breast milk to heal it, after it hurt. But I think it was one of the smartest things I ever did. I believe that my relationship with my daughter and my connection to her, a lot of that comes from that experience. And I knew when it was time to stop, because I knew my daughter would let me know when it was time to stop. And I breastfed her for probably about 10 months. And, I went back to work after 12 weeks. So I took a mechanism with me so that I could pump during the day. And there are freezer bags, and you can put the breast milk in the freezer. And that way my husband could feed her bottles as well, so he could have the experience of feeding his daughter. I loved it. It was what, I cried the day that I stopped, when my daughter kind of let me know that it was time for me to stop. Because and she's incredibly healthy and has been her whole life. She didn't get a single cold until she went to school. And that happened when she was 5. But before then, she was pretty much, germ free. So it was fantastic. And it was great for me too. But I did have a pillow because I had a C-section. So they make this pillow called My Breast Friend that you can actually wrap around you to make it easier, because it was hard for me to hold her. So I could lay her on this pillow and just prop the pillow up, which made it much easier for me to do. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We received just a couple of questions in the chat box, and I read the question from Anna Wazi. Are there practical ways organizations like the CP Foundation can help medical professionals in Ghana to improve knowledge? A lot of our children in Ghana die needlessly because of lack of knowledge and medical negligence.
We have an early detection program that we implemented in about 9 hospitals in the US, 1 in Australia, and I think we're in the process of going to Peru. We did Ireland about 2 years ago. We're in the 5 primary hospitals in Ireland. So please reach out to the foundation at, do I even know the John, I'm sure you can help me out here, and put the link to the CP Foundation in the chat.
Yeah.
And feel free to reach out. And I'm sure that Rachel or, and others on the team can provide you with some information and make a connection. We're looking to obviously be as global as we can. It's really important to us. So I think Ghana's on the list for early detection, and I think that's the that's sort of the start, right, of trying to diagnose kids much earlier. I was diagnosed at roughly 2.5, and with the work that we've done through the early detection program, I think we're down to somewhere between 6 and 9 months after birth, assuming we can give MRIs and other things very early once the premature children are born.
Yeah, I have a question for Oila as well, if I may. I am very spastic, and I want to know if there are any special kind of exercise or physical therapy that one can do when pregnant, because I have trouble with my spasm and my movement now, and I can imagine that the situation will only get worse when I get pregnant. So if there's any way to, to make all the process easier, or do you have...
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody's CP is a little bit different, right? So I think it would probably be good for you to talk to somebody on the physio side to get an exercise routine, but be positive. My spasticity didn't change when I got pregnant. I spent the first 4 months sort of going out forward, and I was afraid that, God forbid, I was going to tip over and not be able to keep myself upright. But, you know, God is kind, and I spent the next 5 months kind of rounding myself out all the way around so that I could stay vertical. And I commuted 4 hours a day, 2 hours each way to my office with 8 flights of stairs, and still did that. Right. So don't assume. What's interesting about pregnancy is I was never allergic to anything, and I kind of developed allergies when I was pregnant. So some weird things are going to happen, but you might actually find your spasticity gets better. As crazy as that sounds, pregnancy does all kinds of weird things to people. Like normally food, I could eat just about anything and nothing would make me sick. And when I was pregnant, I never actually threw up or got sick, but everything I ate made me miserable except for chicken soup. So I kind of lived on chicken soup for a couple of months. So you will make adjustments, but I would recommend that you don't wait until you're pregnant to sort of develop your own exercise routine and make your body stronger. Because do it before you're pregnant, because doing it while you're pregnant, if you haven't been doing it up to that point, I think it would be much more difficult.
How about swimming and pregnancy? Does this work okay, or is it not advisable?
I used to love to swim. Now I can't. My body doesn't like it. I put myself in a pool once and everything kind of got knotted up, so I don't swim anymore. But as you can see, I have equipment in this room that I use that's I forget what you call this thing. It's kind of like an elliptical, but it's arms and legs at the same time. I find that's really helpful, and I had back issues previously, so I use it for that. And I have pulleys and bands and all kinds of and balls that I push up and down walls to keep my arms stronger because I need my arms to walk. So I do all kinds of crazy stuff. But I think, you know, but everybody's routine is going to be different. What works for me is not necessarily going to be what works for you. But find somebody on the physio side that wants to experiment and see what works for you. Right. I mean, this stuff is fun. This is the rest of your life. This is taking ownership of your care and your life for the rest of your life.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have if anyone has question, I have one question for Dr. Shah about her research. So my question is, do you consider also the PME pregnancy for a woman with CP, or the pregnancy with medical assistance?
Oh yes, like IVF. Yeah. So one of my participants had IVF, and I didn't report on this presentation, but she could not get pregnant naturally, so she had IVF. Unfortunately, she had a very bad experience with practitioners due to spasms. She asked to be put to sleep while they retrieve the eggs. Yeah, so normally you retrieve 15 eggs at the end, so it can embrace it. But because of her CP, she thought they wouldn't be able to because there were spasms. So she asked them, can I have anesthetic so you can do it properly? And they said no, we'll be fine, we'll be okay. And she kept saying, no, you won't. I'll be spasming, my legs won't open, and please put me to sleep so you can retrieve the eggs. And they said, no, we'll be okay. So when they did it, obviously they couldn't retrieve all the eggs. So they retrieved 55 eggs instead of 15 because of this negligent practice. And so that's one of our examples of assisted pregnancy. Not a very positive example, sorry.
Thank you very much. Is there any further question?
If not, then maybe we can make a photo.
Yeah, so
John has
this-
a question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I do have a question really to all panelists. In the sense I'm a parent of a child with CP now, will become an adult this year. And one of the issues, which I think is a sort of a real challenge for parents with CP in terms of preparing their adult children for adult life, is sex education. And specifically the fact that a lot of people with CP may also have sort of, cognitive impairments as well, and not maybe at there's maybe a mismatch between their developmental age and their educational age, and when is the right time to go into the issue of sex education with your adolescent with CP, and how to go about doing it. And indeed, looking at some of those quotations that were given about, parents with CP who had never imagined that they might actually be a candidate for having children. So I would just, all of you, if you have any thoughts on that and advice for a parent.
I think it's an interesting thing, right? With my own parents growing up, once you're at that age where kids are dating or whatever, for me, I think it was junior high is when those conversations happened. I think, granted, you have to take into account their cognitive development, but I think it's more important that, once they're sort of at risk for potentially getting pregnant or getting somebody else pregnant, I think it's important that they understand basic biology and how things work so that they don't end up in a situation. It's a lot less scary, at least it's been my experience, if you have an open dialogue and have a conversation. You may not understand everything, but if you keep that door open so that you can continue to discuss if they have questions, if they're confused, if they, want different things. When it comes to parenting in general, a child with CP, I think parents, and again, I say this is my own personal bias, but it worked pretty well for me, and it's worked pretty well for the kids that I've for my own children. I think it's really important for parents to push their kids to do things, right? And teach them to fall down and fail, and things happen and not everything goes their way. Don't protect them. I mean, you want to protect them so that they're physically safe, but I think you have to let kids go out and explore and learn and fail. That's how they build resilience. And this is a tough world that we live in, regardless of country, right? And it is tougher in places, probably outside the US than in the US. I think it's really important that we teach our children, that we're not going to protect them for everything. Our job as parents is to make them independent, right? My primary mission in life is to maintain my own independence and to make my kids independent. That's my job, right? So that means I don't overprotect them. I let them fail. I let them make decisions, and when those decisions turn out to be things that they're not particularly happy with, well, congratulations, you made the decision. So now this is how you learn that sometimes you make good decisions, sometimes you make bad ones. But tomorrow you can wake up and make more decisions, right? We make millions of decisions every day just going through daily life. I think we have to stop being so protective, and particularly kids with CP, there has to be somebody in their life that believes they can do everything they set their mind to, right? My dad, when I was growing up, always asked me two questions. How bad do you want it? And what are you willing to give up to get it? Right? Because you only have one brain and two hands, and there's only so much time in the day. So it's really about, pushing your kids and believing in them. I believe that my daughter can do anything in the world that she sets her mind to. But again, there's the two questions, right? So there are limits to what anybody can do as an individual. But I think we really have to push this. I'm concerned that too many parents of kids with disabilities pamper them, baby them, do everything for them, and they never learn to do for themselves. As a parent, you're not going to be there forever. Unfortunately, biology is what it is, right? As much as my daughter tells me I have to live to be 100, I'm not so sure that that's going to happen. So my job as a parent is to make her independent and put her in a position to live her own life and make her own choices.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Dr. Chat wants answer.
Yeah, but really, really brief. I guess following on from either, I guess, yeah, it's about safety as well. I did a massive project on sexual violence of disabled people, so there needs to be a big awareness around that, because 3 or 4 times as many disabled children and adults are violated compared to non-disabled people, and that's one of the primary causes of this, is lack of awareness, a lack of safety about what is safe sex or what is unsafe sex. So, yeah. Anyway, I stop there.
So, any further comments or questions?
Mathieu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just to echo on what John just said, I think what we can see that there are resources in some of our countries on certain topics when it comes to cerebral palsy. The issue is that there are, I don't know how many countries and territories in the world. I think if you put both, there are perhaps 280 or something like that. And the issue would be to find a way to reconcile this availability of resources with a very simple fact, which is that disability knows no borders, and our cerebral palsy has no passport. Therefore, could we, through ICPS or by partnering with others through mechanisms which have yet to be invented, and that's why we are here for, find a way to provide perhaps remotely or see how this can be done, but to connect people who need support from whatever country with the professionals who are able to provide that support, no matter where they may be located in the world. I think that would be a great advancement and opportunity, because perhaps it could mean that the Slovenian physio could exchange with a British one or with an American one, and that then no matter the country, support could be organized. And I won't go in details insofar as it concerns France, because I know we're a bit different from you all guys, especially at the moment. But yeah, for all countries that would agree to join together, maybe something great could be done.
Thank you.
Now I
John, do
think
you want to talk about the project that we're working on with Rainer and others? I mean, it's not exactly what Matthew's looking for, but it's a beginning.
So in terms of next year and the Congress?
Yeah.
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 So the in different parts of the world, there are what are called the Academies of Childhood Disability. There's the European Academy of Childhood Disability. There's an American Academy of Cerebral Palsy and Developmental Medicine, and there are other regional academies around the world. Every 3 years, they meet together in the meeting of the International Alliance of Academies of Childhood Disability, and that's going to take place next year, 2025, in June, about this time exactly, in Heidelberg in Germany. And Isla and myself and a number of others are working on a committee of family and users and stakeholders in order to prepare that event. And we're so it's very much taking an approach that persons with lived experience of childhood onset disability should be a part of the planning and the design of the conference, setting some of the priorities in terms of the research that should be spotlighted, and we're all busy at the moment preparing different sessions. The deadline is on this Sunday, to propose sessions for next year. It's a long way ahead, but there's a lot of preparation to be done. And so indeed, that will be an exceptional forum in which professionals in this field can meet with persons with lived experience to really share the latest research and to bring forward this situation that we're discussing here. And there will be bursaries, there will be sponsorship for participation from persons in lower middle income countries, for example, who will have difficulty in being able to travel to that. And there will also be an online aspect of it. It'll be a big face-to-face congress, but there will also be an online track, including a night track, as they call it, so that wherever you are in the world, at some point in your day, there will be something going on during the conference program that you can actually attend.
Any further questions? On the contrary, we can all switch on the camera to take a picture. John, can you take the picture?
Yeah, I can do that. If people don't mind. If they want to be in the photo, if you can switch. If you don't want to be in the photo, of course, there's no obligation. Maybe a minute more. And 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
Thank you. And if there isn't any further question or discussion, maybe I'll hand over the mic, the virtual mic, to Laura, so that she may share her experience and conclude this wonderful time together.
Thank you, Agnes, and thank you, Yuho, for your experiences and to be here today with us. What about my experience? I start from my previous questions about PME, because I am a woman who did PME to become a mother. And if I think about the way in which I started, so I had to move to my country. So I had to go abroad because it was quite impossible to find a doctor who consider me as an adult, as a woman with cerebral palsy, who really wanted to be a mother. I always had the impression to be considered as a girl who wants a new adult to play with. And well, I spent about 9 years to become mother, and this long time allowed me to build a sort of team ready to follow me in the case of pregnancy. So the first question I was asked when I got pregnant was, are you conscious that there is any literature about women with CP or women with disability and pregnancies? It was 5 years ago. And so for that, I thank very much Dr. Shah for her job, because it's very, very important for us, for every one of us, in the present and in the future, have a basis for our experience. We know that every pregnancy and every woman is different, but having a basis of experience, having the possibility to share our own experience is very, very important. At the middle of my pregnancies, I started to share my pregnancy with a sort of weekly diary on social networks. So starting from the 20th weeks, I started to tell. It was for myself at first, but my experience was very important because it was shared from a lot of people, and it allows us to constitute a sort of networks for the mothers with disability. And it was important because I was conscious in that moment that we need to build a new sort of network between women with disability, because I was conscious that in the past, other disabled women became mothers, but no one spoke about it. And if I can answer John's question, when it's the time, I think there is not time. Because, for example, for what concerns my personal experience, my parents had to explain me everything because of the periods. So I had to be ready at the moment of the first period. So I had to be conscious that my body will change step by step, day by day, and they had to explain to me what the period is and what it means for the future. And because why is it is very important, the awareness of sexuality, because of the knowledge of ourselves. So it's a sort of self-knowledge, but it's also important because of the having the possibility to be aware about the danger, because harassing a person with disability is much, much easier than any other person. And I think that a lot of among us could tell something about it, or as an experience about it, is because we are very easy victims of harassment, and we have to be conscious of that. And I know that it's very, very difficult to tell about harassment because of the social prejudice, but it is a very important part of the topics that we are dealing with. Because I know that all over the world there are women with disability and persons with disability that are harassed and don't denounce because of shame. We have to break out the shame. And the best way to break this shame is speaking and telling our stories of normality and normal life. Because as Ayla said before, our disability is just a part of our life. Being a person with disability means just being a person with different needs. But every one of us has special needs. A person who doesn't know how is sent an email or something like that is a person with a sort of disability. Not recognized, but it's a sort of big disability, maybe worse than my disability, because it's out the world. So I want to sum up our meeting with a question. What is disability? And what means being a person with disability? So see you to the next appointment. And so thank you very much to be here and to have followed our meeting and conference from all around the world, I can say.
We appreciate your attendance so much, and thank you. I've gained a lot from this event, so let's just hope for the better future to come.
Thanks, everybody.